Hey guys, it's Cameron here with Emerson Property Management. Every week, I bring you tools, tactics, strategies, lessons I've learned, things that help me build up a sizable portfolio in about 2 years and now manage that portfolio. Today, guys, I'm getting a lot of questions around qualifications. So I wanted to break down our main qualifications and talk through that so that if you're doing this yourself, you have a way to, or this free reference really, to screen your tenants. Or if you're using an agent or a leasing agent or a property manager, you can test and see what their qualifications are. This is what we do in Houston. I can't say what everybody else does. And I will say this changes. But if you're interested in what our current standards are as of August 2024, these are what they'll be, or at least the main ones. And yeah, you guys can use that as a quick reference on how we're able to keep evictions less than 1% using these qualifications. Before I get into that, if you guys like this, find it valuable, please like, share, subscribe. It really helps us out. If not, comment, let us know what we can do. Or if you have any feedback, we're always looking for constructive feedback. Okay, let's get into this. So before I say anything, I'm floored that it's been 7, 8, 9, 10 years I've been doing this and have yet to do one on tenant, on our qualifications and tenant screening. But I think the reason I haven't yet is because we're going to give this all to you on our website. If you go to emersonpropertymanagement.com/qualifications, all this information will be on there. Now, what I'm going to give you today is just a summary. That's really detailed, right? We provide that link to our tenants. You guys can use that as a free reference and look at it in your leisure. But we update this weekly. So what I'm going to share with you, or what we might be talking about today, might not be the same in a year's time, in 6 months' time. Yearly, we look at all of our evictions, all of the serious issues or tenant issues that we've had, and we say, where did that come from? Was there something we missed in screening? Do we need to update the criteria? So I can tell you that this has already changed from the time I've started doing this. We adjust things, right? We currently, and we always try to do this, is keep evictions below 1%. 1 out of 100, that's what we want to evict. Less than 1 out of 100. And to do that, we need to be dynamic and change if the data is telling us something. So the stuff I'm going to share you guys is not anything earth-shattering. These qualifications are not going to be like, oh my gosh, Cameron, but that's so new and novel. But it's like blocking and tackling, or bench, deadlift, and squat. The stuff works. It's been around for years, and we keep some of these standards. So I'm going to talk about these, but like I said, you guys can go to the website anytime you want. So handy dandy whiteboard here. Get the glare off of it for you. Qualifications. The first one is 3 times monthly rent is what we want the tenants to make. So anytime a tenant applies, we always say if the rent's $3,000 a month, they need to make a gross income of $9,000. Now, that can be between 2 tenants. It could be between 3. But collectively, whoever is going to be legally responsible for that lease needs to collectively make at least $9,000 a month. We screwed this up one time, and it was like 2.9. Ended up having to evict the tenant. It was a mess. I have heard some companies going down to 2.5 because housing prices have gone up dramatically, that some companies are lowering the standard. I don't believe in lowering this by any stretch. I don't know if this will ever go away for us, because if 1/3 of your money is going to rent, and a lot of people have about 20, 30, 40% of their income goes to debts, and you got just your normal needs like utilities and food and groceries and just clothing for your children and yourself, like that money gets eaten up pretty quickly. So be cognizant of that. If you see anybody wavering this is one that's been tried and true, and it is still to this day. I've heard this for years. We've started this. This has been one that's been unchanged. 3 years rental history. So if an applicant is applying, we always require 3 years of rental history. Cameron, what happens if I get a homeowner that sold over the past 5 years? That is a very good question, and this does come up. Hey, I sold my house. I'm moving. I want to rent your place out. No problem. Just provide us some documentation or the HUD of your closing statement, or the deed, or whatever you have that shows that, yes, you sold 123 Main Street, last month or 2 months ago, and you want to move out. That's the only thing we require, and that's a way to get around this. If there's always somebody, maybe there's a tenant that, just is graduating college or something like that. So we have some other stipulations, and those things change If they don't have 3 years rental history, that will do. Maybe it's a double deposit. But this 3 years rental history really helps us out and make sure that we're contacting the last landlord or the current landlord, but we really want to contact and talk to the one before that. Because, and I've heard old timers say this, and it was funny because they're like, you don't want to contact the current landlord. They want to get that tenant out. If they're problematic, they'll tell you whatever you want to hear to get the tenant out of the property. Who you want to talk to is the one before that, because they have no incentive. The tenant's already gone and out of the property, so they don't have any incentive to lie to you. So we always grab 3 years. Sometimes that's only one landlord. It is what it is, but usually that'll catch two. So you can see if there's any differences. They said they had a pet on this one and not on the current one. There's all sorts of things like that. But 3 years has been a good number for us, and I think we've went from 2 to 3. So this is a good one. Also, and no matter what they tell you, whatever they treat the old places like is exactly how they're going to treat your place. If these are shitty and they talk about how they paid late all the time and yada yada, they're more likely than not, they're going to do the same thing to your house. Okay, no evictions or broken leases. This has been one that's changed for us. So now we do no evictions or broken leases within the last 7 years. And it's changed. We changed it because there were some tenants who had evictions like 8, 9, 10 years ago. And, it shows up on the database. It will always show up. They might have been 20 to 22, 23, 24, 25 when that happened. And now they're 30, 35, 40, whatever it is. And they're just in a much different place. They might have a family. They made a mistake when they were a kid. It is what it is. Things happen. I was stupid in my 20s. And, if you're not growing and learning and changing, and you're wasting time. So I believe that if they got evicted early on in their career or when they were a kid, they shouldn't be punished for it in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So we've changed that, and that has still, even with that change, we have still maintained a less than 1% eviction rate. So we did 7 years. Maybe at some point we'll further reduce that, but right now we've been at 7, and all the data is showing that we're still evicting tenants less than 1%. So one other note of that is evictions or broken leases. That's my chicken scratches for leases, or debts by apartment complexes. So sometimes maybe an apartment complex or maybe a landlord won't go through the eviction court, or they'll stop the eviction because once they file an eviction, that tenant will then leave, and then they don't get the eviction on their record because the tenant left. But you can still file the judgment or the collections for all the back rent and damages to the property. So this includes damages, lost rent, and maybe a huge debt owed to a housing provider. So make sure you're taking that in consideration when you're screening, that you go through and check all the what the debts are for. Is it a car loan, or is it a $20,000 loan that they have, or debt that they didn't pay a landlord because they tore the house all to Timbuktu? Again, that's been a good one for us. No violent crimes. This has been something that's come up, y'all. It's a handful of times. So, and we do no violent crimes within the past 10 years. And this is another one. We used to do none at all, ever. Again, people make mistakes in their 20s, and then in their 30s and 40s, in my opinion, they shouldn't have to pay for it. And the data shows that. So now, and you might ask, what are crimes against a person? These are violent crimes. Assault, things that are super violent, armed robbery, things like that are crimes against a person. Anything to do with a child. I don't want to get into too far down on all these things. It's not really a fun topic, but any crimes against a person or aggravated, we want to make sure, especially when we're in a duplex, triplex, or quad, we want to make sure we're taking care of our neighbors as well. We don't want dirtbags living next door and a family or somebody to get hurt because we put some dirtbag beside them. You really wouldn't sleep well at night or knowing that we let that happen. So 10 years, no violent crimes, no nothing. And then there are a couple of those that I mentioned in there that doesn't matter how long it's been, we're not going to go forward with that. But yeah, that's helped us out. Again, somebody did something stupid, an armed robbery in their early 20s or something like that. And now they're 40, haven't had a history, they should be able to rent your property. At least my opinion. And like I said, the data shows that. So those are the main ones, y'all. There's a couple little other nuances. We do pet screening to make sure the ESA pit bull that they have, or ESA donkey or peacock, is legitimate. We've got a video up here to talk about the screening criteria. And then, you might ask, Cameron, why don't you have anything on credit scores on there? Well, we do a credit risk fee. And you can see this on the website. I don't want to mention the exact dollar amount because it's going to change. But if you want to go on our website, so basically the lower your credit score, the more you pay in your credit risk fee. So we don't actually have, at the time of this recording, we do not have a minimum credit score requirement. So, that has, again, we've done these evictions. We've had evictions with literally credit scores in the 700s. We've had evictions with credit scores in the 500s. So it was not a good indicator for us. Again, the annual review, I know what it sounds like and feels like, but we have to let the data guide us. And the data was showing that lower credit scores were not being evicted at a higher rate. So now we had some payment challenges and maybe other things that would come up, but and that's why we have that risk fee. So you guys can check that out online or on our website as well. Okay, y'all, I will do another video on the application process, but those are our qualifications. I hope that was helpful. Again, we adjust this every year. You guys, that's a good, use this. This is a starting place. This is a starting place for you to just grab some stuff that may or may not work in your area, and then go from there. Take this stuff, make it as your own, learn from it, see what your property manager or leasing agent is doing, and then when you have a problem, you make an adjustment. Okay, y'all, thanks.